Alright, what's up Facebook? What's up Instagram? As promised, I try to go live most every Sunday, but sometimes I wait till Monday or Tuesday. But anyways, this video is going to be shorter than normal. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But it still won't be 3 to 5 minutes like some people want out there. I've had people that I know say, can you do shorter videos? And I'm like, that's your problem. Is you want something that's really more than 150 years old, but let's just stop with 150. You want a 150-year-old problem to be condensed down to 3 to 5 minutes. That's why America looks the way it does. So, got to show some initiative. You got to put certain things down. So this one should be titled, How Ignorant Liberals Are. Alright, so right now, if you went over to X, or you got on old school Twitter, it's all over social media, but X is probably the most atrocious account, app, whatever you want to call it, out there. It is the Southern saying, ate up with ignorance. It's ate up with them. Now, personally, since it's Sunday, as I always talk about, and being a Christian, for me, it's mainly evil, and also corruption, fraud, and then part of it's just being straight up ignorant, again, incompetent, dumb, and lazy on their behalf. All right, 54% of America, this is just on average, and it depends on, obviously, a lot of polls out there, and how they determine this, but 54% of America are at a 6th grade education and below of reading and comprehension. That's atrocious. So I'd like to apologize when I make jokes about Mississippi and West Virginia and even Alabama. It's everywhere. 54% of Americans are at a 6th grade education and below of reading and comprehension. That is absolutely pathetic. That's atrocious. All right, but it shows every day in my inboxes. Not everybody, but it shows. It shows especially, though, on social media. 68% of America, you've heard me say this over and over and over, but you got to be consistent. 68% on average, 68% of America cannot simply list the 3 branches of government. Just say the words, legislative, judicial, and executive. 68% of America cannot do that. But oh boy, do they want their opinion. Do they want their First Amendment? Oh boy, do they shine like turds on a silver spoon all over the internet with their atrocious IQs out there about their opinions and First Amendments on what? Politics, government, etc. I mean, this is the key thing here, right out the gate. Here's the key thing. Like my dad and grandfathers always taught me, and really my mom and my grandmothers, and my family for that matter. If you're always doing what's right, if you're doing the right thing, you're keeping your nose out of trouble, you're also always telling the truth, you're minding your own business, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you won't ever have to, one, defend yourself by, like people do when they lie. When you tell one lie, you got to keep telling them. Because your foundation was never built on doing what's right. Now, we're human. We make mistakes. Absolutely. That's not what this is about. But at the same time, again, see all these liberals out there, all these people, they have no foundation to stand on. They want to build a bear society. They want to grab and go. They have no foundation. They want the law when the law presents how they want to build their life. All right? This is not how our nation was set up. It just wasn't set up that way. And the federal government, again, you can't give to somebody what you haven't taken from someone else. It's really that simple. You cannot give to someone else what you haven't taken from another group of people. So that's why we have all these participation trophies now, crying, whining, complaining, griping, and looking like hot Cheetos, right? Hot stale Cheetos. That's what they look like. Terrible. So 68% of America can't even name the very topic, like the very core things. Now, there's always going to be debates, sure. There's always going to be, sit-down talks, but that's fine. That's what we're supposed to do. There's always going to be talks about, well, what about this law versus this law, or this legislation and this act and this code and this. We already have enough trouble as it is with what we have that is for good. So how is it that we reached where we reached with the attitudes, the atrocious behaviors, the mindsets, and all of what we have now when they don't even have a foundation they stand on? So here's how you roast a liberal. Democrats, liberals, whoever's saying these lines right now, this is how you roast them. When they say that, oh, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. One, you hit them with Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. We're not a democracy in the first place. We're a republic. All right, so there's one little excerpt. But on the bigger scale, the bigger picture, he's a threat to democracy. He's violating the laws. He's violating the Constitution. Probably would help if you actually knew the Constitution. Probably would help if you actually knew the laws and you didn't cherry pick the laws. The same way most liberals, let's just be honest, most liberals aren't Christians. Most liberals aren't faith-based, right? Not all of them, but a lot of them. So right out the gate, you got a great scenario to use. Most, not all, again, listen to my terminology. Most liberals are not faith-based. And they don't like Christians. And they'll hammer a Christian in a heartbeat that cherry picks from the Bible. So why are they cherry picking from law? Same thing. That's what they're doing. They're cherry picking. All right. They want the law when it fits their narrative. They don't want the law to fit society and humanity as a whole. They don't want that. See, their participation trophy's been taken away. All of a sudden, Americans have risen up, patriots have risen up from all walks of life. So it's not a race thing. More people voted for President Trump out of the African American communities, Latino communities, etc. So it's no longer a race card. Now we're in a good versus evil. We're in an incompetent versus IQ. It's really that simple. So no one can pull the race card anymore. Or any other card. Homophobic this, homophobic, all that. Nope. There are gay people who love President Trump who know straight up a foundation, laws, and orders. All right. So at the end of the day, everything that we're talking about, the basis and the stem of it, the root of it, is straight up legislation. Our foundation, what did our founders set up? Our founders of one, the Revolutionary War, the military first, the military law first, then the Declaration of Independence first, then the Articles of Confederation, then the Constitution as we know it now, and then the amendments. All in that order. Our founders set that up. So you never hear a liberal, ever. You never, ever, ever hear a liberal talk about the military foundation, military laws, the Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, then the Constitution. They never talk about that. Why? Because they have no foundation. And what they don't realize is that guys like me, people like me, operators of all sorts, from the top to the bottom, guys like me are the ones that protect their rear ends and give you the life. Because I don't want anybody to take your right away. No one's taking your right away, though. See, that's the thing. No one's taking rights away. Your rights are still there. They're just not going to be funded by the federal. So it's kind of like prohibition in the 1920s, right? Or something like that. even though the government was trying to control that even. So there's that. But, so that's probably not a good, really, example. But it's kind of like, again, if you can find somebody to do something for you in the dark, as the saying is, nobody's going to stop you from doing it. All us patriots are saying is we're not going to fund it anymore. It's not being paid for by us anymore. So you can pay for it out of pocket, and you can go find someone that'll do something like that, whatever it may be, sex change, all these other things. But we're not paying for it as a whole anymore. All right? So there's that. So all these people out there saying he's a threat to democracy and a threat, violating the Constitution, violating the law. They don't know the law. They have no idea. And we got now what I call bookends. What's called bookends. So now, if you were, let's say you were on the fence with me before, right? You're on the fence and you're like, I don't know, I can't see it and all these other things. Look, it's a lot of information for one. A lot of information. But it's in a chronological blueprint. Also, from November the 8th, 2016 to present day, there is an absolute line drawn in the sand, meaning that there is an absolute definitive strategic plan and blueprint that separates any other president in history before November the 8th, 2016 to present day. Now, again, I can't make you read, I can't make you study, and I dang sure can't make you comprehend it all. But I never use names, but I'm going to use an example, an email that I received this morning or last night sometime about how a certain person's out there spreading propaganda, and I'm not even going to give it light because it's negative, but there's a certain person out there that people have gravitated to all of a sudden, and they're saying this far-fetched, outlandish, craziest comment you could ever say. And people have latched on to it and not knowing. It's created confusion. Well, first off, straight out the gate, if you are Christian, believe this is biblical as it is, then you go straight to the Bible. God says, He's not the author of confusion. I didn't give you the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So it tells you got to use your mind right there out the gate, the Bible. God also gave us free will, right? So we have free will to do what's right or to do what's wrong. We have that power. So when God tells you, I'm not the author of confusion, then anything that confuses you, upsets you, frustrates you, makes you mad, bitter, angry, upset, whiny, pouty, whatever it may be, negative-wise, negative energy whatsoever, it's not of God, straight out the gate. So there's that. Now, if you're not a Christian and you don't believe in God, you're already in trouble. So there's that. But, again, you have to know your foundation. You have to know what you're standing on. You have to know what they're working with. But there's most definitely a definitive line in the sand that separates all other time periods, but also coincides with certain laws that were put into place years ago. So you got to know those. So I'm going to use this photo that I screenshot off of X earlier. And this is a typical liberal. Typical liberal now. Now you can't see it, but I may post it later without their name because I don't want to give them any more publicity than they think they want. But this person got 164,000 little hearts on X. Doesn't have a blue check. But again, this is what's wrong with America. Americans want to get in drama and propaganda, but they don't want to see what the military is working with. And if you believe and support in the military who does fight and defend for yourself, you probably want to know what we're working with. It's real simple. So this low IQ individual says this: for MAGAs who don't understand the Constitution, one, it says a judge cannot overturn a law as written. Two, an executive order is not a law. 3, a president cannot create a law without Congress. And it says, so a judge has every right to overturn an executive order if it's found to be unconstitutional. Now let me just show you how dumb and ignorant these people are. So, I'm going to read what an executive order is. All right, then we're going to do a scenario that's already been done. It says, in the United States, an executive order is a directive by the President of the United States that manages operations of the federal government. The legal or constitutional basis for executive orders has multiple sources. Article 2 of the United States Constitution gives presidents broad executive and enforcement authority to use their discretion to determine how to enforce the law or to otherwise manage the resources and staff of the federal government's executive branch. The ability to make such orders is also based on expressed or implied acts of Congress that delegate the president some degree of discretionary power. It's called delegated legislation. The vast majority of executive orders, listen, don't just be in the comment box, I'm not watching, but I'm just saying, listen. The vast majority of executive orders are proposed by federal agencies before being issued by the president. Like both legislative statutes and regulations promulgated by government agencies and executive orders are subject to judicial review and may be overturned if the orders lack support by statute or the Constitution. Some policy initiatives require approval by the legislative branch, but executive orders have significant influence over the internal affairs of government, deciding how and to what degree legislation will be enforced, dealing with emergencies, waging wars, and in general fine-tuning policy choices in the implementation of broad statutes. As the head and state of the government of the United States, as well as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces, only the President can issue an executive order. Presidential executive orders, once issued, remain in full force until they are canceled, revoked, adjudicated unlawful, or expire on their terms. At any time, the President may revoke, modify, or make exceptions from an executive order, whether the order was made by the current President or the predecessor. Typically, a new president reviews in-force executive orders in the first weeks of office. Now let's go back to Ignoramus and his stupid post. For MAGAs who don't understand the Constitution, a judge cannot overturn a law as written. An executive order is not a law. A president cannot create a law without Congress. So a judge has every right to overturn an executive order if found to be unconstitutional. The only part of that is true is that bottom line. But here's where they're trying to confuse whoever their followers are, or whoever sees this post. One, they're not addressing what laws are currently invoked right now and who invoked them. Whether it was Congress or presidential and or a joint. A joint. Not the kind that Snoop Dogg and Willie like. So if it was a joint launching of whatever it may be. So let's look at national emergencies. All right. So a national emergency, again, right here, the War Powers Act, you hear me talk about a lot. The War Powers Act of 1973 is also called the War Powers Resolution of 1973. It was an amendment to the first War Powers Act of 1941. Hear what it's called? The first War Powers Act. We didn't have one before that. All right. And then we had the second War Powers Act of 1942. Both put into place by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There's a reason why President Trump mentions Roosevelt all the time, Eisenhower all the time, and McKinley all the time. There's a reason. And if you haven't picked up that these last 9 years have been in operation and different than any other time in presidential history, then you're not listening to the very man, especially if you claim to be a patriot, Republican, conservative, you're not listening to the man. You're just a vote for the man supporter. But if you want to know what's going on, there's a strategic plan, strategic blueprint, finite blueprint, military paired with federal. Now let's read the War Powers Resolution. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 is a federal law intended to check the U.S. President's power to commit the United States to an armed conflict without the consent of the U.S. Congress. The resolution was adopted in the form of a United States Congressional Joint Resolution. It provides that the President can send the United States Armed Forces into action abroad only by declaration of war by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by attack upon the United States, its territories or possessions, or its armed forces. Now, this is why you got to listen to terminology. It just said specifically, can send the armed forces into action abroad. When a president is federalizing his troops for the United States of America alone, the Constitution gives him that full authority. It didn't need another act or another piece of legislation. The Constitution already does that. So that's why you got to listen. The War Powers Act says in action abroad. It don't say national, federalization of the National Guard, federalization of the reserve components on our turf. That's why when we, veterans, took an oath, we raised our right hand. It says what? I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It don't say foreign or. It don't say foreign and or. It says foreign and domestic. That's why Title 50 is very important. Title 10 is presidential authority, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, military law. Title 50 is war and national defense. Not war and international defense, war and national defense. Well, that's funny, because on December the 20th, 2019 is the last amendment to the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act is a part of Title 50 as well. So see, that's why it pays to listen to terminology. And liberals right now are atrocious. If I was Commander-in-Chief, I would deport every liberal. That's how, they would definitely call me a dictator. I would deport every liberal. I would take them to a holding spot of some nation that would also be on board with it. Maybe like Australia, send them out to the great unknown, send them out there and make them drink hot, pissy Foster's beer, all right, and make them have food that don't have salt and pepper in it. I would give them an incentive to read and study, and then I'd give them a test and say, okay, you want back in America? Well, you probably want to listen, not hear, listen to respond, not hear to react. And now you're going to read, and you're going to learn how to read, and you're going to learn how to comprehend what you read. All right? And then also, you're not going to take for granted anymore our foundation that my ancestors fought for. I don't know about yours, but mine did it. My lineage traces back there. I'm a son of the Revolution and a son of the Confederacy, but the Revolution especially. And my family were here before then. All right? I have lineage of that, have documents of that. So I don't have any other options. You do if you don't like what I'm saying. You have plenty of options. There's plenty of places to go. And there's plenty of us that'll send your ass there if you don't want to be here. There's plenty of us that will literally pack your bags, pay for your one way out of here. We will do that. If you don't want to be here anymore, I know plenty of people who will chip in and gladly send you on your way elsewhere. It's really simple. So, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. These people, they love the word Constitution. They love the word Constitution like they love the word love. But they know nothing about it. They misconstrue it. They butcher it. They twist it. They use it for manipulation tactics. And they use it to gaslight you. They know nothing about the Constitution. Nothing about it. Because, again, the president has authorities. He has certain powers that enables him to utilize those. Real simple. I mean, that is what he is supposed to do. All right? He has the authority and the power to suspend the Constitution. I've heard people get up in arms about that. I'm like, go read Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. It's called the Suspension Clause. It's called the writ of habeas corpus. If you don't like it, guess what that is? The original Constitution, as it sits. September the 17th, 1787. You don't like it? That's part of the Constitution. So the president they can suspend the Constitution in case of, it says specifically, invasion or rebellion of public safety. See, public safety. Now there's something right there that don't have a race. It don't have color, nationality, ethnicity. It don't care if you're gay, Buddhist, atheist, whatever you are. Public safety. Broad term meaning no harm to our people. Not no harm to a group of people. No harm as a whole. Invasion or rebellion of public safety. Now, all of our participation trophies out there that are whining, crying, complaining, fussing, moaning, griping, carrying on, looking atrocious. All right. Those people, they wouldn't know a wolf if it was sitting in their living room posing as their own mother. They wouldn't know it. That's how atrocious we've gotten in America with liberals and allowing them to have a voice, allowing them to utilize their First Amendment. Let me show you how the First Amendment works, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the little breakdown again? Remember our founders who said enough's enough, and they started a war before they established the military? Our founders, my ancestors, maybe some of yours, our founders started a war before they had an established military, before they had military law, before the Declaration of Independence, before the Articles of Confederation, which was the first Constitution, before the Constitution as you know it, and then before the Bill of Rights, now known as the Amendments. Our founders started a war. A lot of people don't realize that the Bill of Rights, what you now know as your amendments, the first 10, there were 12 actually, they adopted 10 of them. But a lot of people don't realize back then there were Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists wanted the states to have more power versus the Federalists who wanted the federal government to have more power. So the Anti-Federalists, the Federalists told the Anti-Federalists, well, okay, we're at a place in a good place, write something, propose it to us, and we'll take a look at it. Well, they wrote the Bill of Rights, now known as your rights, your First Amendments, your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, all the way. They adopted those because they said, well, these are great for people, for individual rights, but it's not a government, a framework for Congress and Congress to represent us as a whole on a federal level. So when you go to Marbury versus Madison, 1803, which is still a landmark case, Supreme Court case, 1803, when one of our founding fathers had to go into Supreme Court and tell what a federal law looked like, a law. It says, in layman's terms, any statute that bears the appearance, so looks like a law, any statute that looks like a law that doesn't back and support the Constitution is null and void. So apply that again to your First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, etc. Apply this. Origin. Origin matters. You wouldn't have a First Amendment if you didn't have the Revolutionary War. You wouldn't have your Second Amendment, your Third, none of that. The Constitution would not have had a living, breathing chance had it not been for that Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence. If you'll go back to January the 20th, 2025, President Trump, in his speech, they had a Democrat up there speaking. She said, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And then said that the Constitution says. It's not the Constitution. It's the Declaration of Independence. So, here you have people who don't even know the Declaration and what it means, but went a long train of abuses. I'm pretty sure any Republican, conservative, or anybody with just an IQ whatsoever can look at the atrocity that we have and the atrocious mindsets out there and the behaviors of all these people who have no idea what they're talking about. That is what we call a long train of abuses. It's not just Congress and what they did. You have an equal part. Your equal part is in the Declaration of Independence, where it says it is their right, it is their duty to overthrow such government. Overthrow means to get rid of something by Oxford Language's definition. To get rid of. So when you hear liberals out there talking about all dictators and all their this, the insurrection and this, that, and other, our founders started a war and kicked the British's asses with weapons. All right, set up what we have. So your origin, everything we have was set up by that foundation and origin. So to me, even though I can't think like a liberal, don't want to be a liberal, but if you're going by standards, if you're going by straight up integrity, if you want something different than what Republicans talk about, conservatives talk about, patriots talk about, you probably don't want to quote from the same thing. Look, if you want to be a bowl of hot ass and stale Cheetos, then just be that. Hate what you hate, say what you want to say, but don't quote from the same foundation, because it don't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It won't work like that. It's never going to work like that. The other thing is you're not going to do anything about it. None of you are going to do it. Any of you liberals out there, you're not going to do anything about it. You haven't done anything about it. You won't do anything about it. And you ain't going to do anything about it. All you're going to do is this right here. Blah, 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 blah. And all of you people out there, Republicans, conservatives, be careful what you're commenting on, because now with social media, algorithms, liking, loving a post makes it more visible. Stay away from it. Let these people talk to their own people. Same thing with a lot of patriot, conservatives, Republicans. A lot of these people out there are regurgitating. They don't know what's going on. They regurgitate, and or it sounds just like fake news. All they're doing is putting it into the blender and reshuffling it and saying something just like a little bit different, and or, oh, it appeases you. No. If you want to know what's going on, you need to know who's in charge and what that looked like and what it entails. When the military is in charge, military government, military occupation, continuity of operations, continuity of government. That's all been in place. It all requires a strategic plan, blueprint, special operations, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare. There's blueprints for that. So, example. Your two bookends, and I'm going to do these first. Your two bookends, already, straight out the gate, you have what I call a bookend. All right? So this is how you put a liberal in their place. Or if you're having family members out there who are still calling themselves Republicans, conservatives, but they want to argue with you about how President Trump could still be president, let me think about that. That hurts my head. But there are people out there that claim to be President Trump supporters, claim they love him, support him, and everything, but then to get mad and say that that's a conspiracy theory, or what, you're crazy for thinking that, and why would it look like? Why would you not, first off, even if you don't understand it right out the gate, why would you not want to know that there's actually a lawful way that President Trump could expand his power? Why would you not want to know that? That right there is what's wrong with America as well. It's the fact that people want to get mad over something that could actually present them with a happy solution, a peaceful solution, and or, your feelings, your emotions, calm them down, settle them down, and say, hey, there's a lawful way this is being done. All right. Yes, it sounds far-fetched at first, sure, because you've never heard it. You didn't know it was there. Data shows that. Go back to 54% of Americans in their reading and comprehension, and then go to the 68% of America who can't even name the 3 branches of government. So if you can't name the 3 branches, I know you can't tell me who writes the laws, who passes the laws, and who interprets the laws. So little things like that. So what you have now are things called bookends. You have a bookend. And so I had a person the other day who commented on one of my posts, a long post too. They commented long. And they mean well, and I'm fine with that. You know, I let people have their opinion up to a certain point on my pages. I have authority of that. Certain things people are saying, if it misleads people in the comment box, well, then we make an executive decision on what they're saying and what it is. But I allow people to have comments all over my pages. All right. So this person was saying about, well, you know, you just need to move on from certain things. Like people who try to spite me. No, you're missing the point of what my mission is. And with all due respect to that person, thank you for your comment, but you're misunderstanding. I am not a podcaster. I'm utilizing the tools that have been given to us, such as Facebook, Instagram, etc. I'm utilizing the tools, but no, I'm a retired United States veteran. I've been tasked to do this because I know and I have the capacity, the IQ and capacity to take a lot of information and put it in a bundle for you. And then you don't get thrown crumbs and like Hansel and Gretel, like all these other people that are trying to have a podcast because they want a name, a face. They want to be the one that broke the news, toted the news, and all this other stuff. That's not me. I empower you to where you, if you'll read what's in place, what the good guys are using, my guys, our guys, if you'll read, study, and comprehend, apply, initiative, if you'll do that, it empowers you. It also takes you away from all the time you spend on internet and podcasts. You don't need multiple podcasts. Just like this person who sent me that email last night or this morning. I'm like, first off, the only thing you need is President Trump, the generals, the military law, and the federal that are invoked right now. That's all you need. It's already enough to consume as is. It's already enough to take federal and learn all the laws and orders that are invoked with federal, and then pair them with all the military laws and orders that are invoked, and also know how that functions and operates, special operations, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, clandestine operations, etc., 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 plus federal and all those that entail, and how they pair and how they coincide, how they conjoin, if you will. It's already enough as is, as it sits, to know that. You don't need anything else. But you need someone who does know. That's why I get upset for you. Not upset because I get upset. I get upset for you because I see all these pushers out there, propaganda regurgitators. They just want a name, they want a face. They don't know how to problem solve on the front. They're not that. And that's what gets Americans all caught up in drama, propaganda. It gets you confused. It makes you upset. It makes you bitter. It gets you in a bad day, a bad mood, etc. You want to remove all that. It's easy. Now you have proof. So I give 2 examples for a reason. It's just because it's fun. All right? It's fun. So the first one comes with the cannons. All right? About a year or 2 back, there was this Army veteran of 20 plus years who was trolling my pages. All right? And they were saying, oh, Derek Johnson's lying, blah, blah. First off, you can be wrong without lying. All right? So there's another thing we have in this whole quote-unquote movement, which is a movement per se, but it's also an operation. But you can be wrong without lying. All right? So this person said that the cannons are always at Arlington. All right? Which is true. So kudos to you out there. I know your name, but won't give it the satisfaction. But kudos to you. That's true. but you also prove my point. See, certain people want to be right so much, and or they want to be a name or a face, or they want to be the one that says, I caught so-and-so, or I busted so-and-so, or they were wrong, it was me, I got them, I caught them, look where I caught them. You were so worried and concerned about catching me in a quote-unquote lie, or being wrong about something, and you being right, that you actually proved me being right. So, every one of you have what they call a bookend now. Alright? Even though you already had it, but you really have it now. For example, all the way back to President Nixon, you can go, I've already provided the links on my pages. You can go look at every link, and I put the minute or the hour of which it starts where you can see the cannons. That way you don't have to watch the whole thing, because some of them are an hour or too long, some of them aren't. And I put the minute of which they show the cannons. Alright? So, Nixon, you can see his cannons. You can see Gerald Ford, for whatever reason. Now, I'm not going to make the joke because he's already passed on, and I respect the dead no matter what. They've already been passed on. Their judgment will come another way. It won't come through a courtroom. But Jimmy Carter is the only one you can hear the cannons, but they never showed them. On every broadcast that I've looked at so far, you cannot find the visuals of the cannons. Now, I have my personal jokes about that, but I'll keep them to myself. Then you got, so you obviously have Nixon, you have Ford, you have President Reagan, and then you have George Herbert Walker, you have Clinton twice, obviously, and then you have your Bush twice, Bush Jr. W, all right, and then Obama. Those are your front end of your books. That's one bookend. And President Trump, the first go around. 4 cannons, 21 guns, which is a 21 gun salute. And ironically, for George Herbert Walker Bush, they have 5 cannons there, which is fine because the 5th cannon shoots the one-off round. So that's still fine. It's still shooting a one-off round. However, most of the time, the 4 cannons, that's your 21 gun salute. That's 3 for fire and 1 for misfire. The 4th cannon never fires. In the 3 cannon, volley salutes, there's 2 firing. The 3rd is for a misfire. It don't ever fire unless there's a misfire, meaning a dud to one of the shells, artillery. All right. So you have a bookend. Every one of those soldiers saluted the president at the motorcades. Every one of those. From Nixon, the visuals, every one of those. Every one of those salutes had a commissioned officer present, which is Army Regulation 600-25. All right, because it's the 3rd Infantry Regiment. Guess what the 3rd Infantry Regiment is? The oldest unit in the Army. 1784. All right, the oldest unit in the Army, still active and ongoing, are the ones that do the salutes, cannon salutes. They're known as the Old Guard, the Presidential Salute Battery. All right, so every president from Nixon that they've shown on TV, you can go on YouTube and look, every president from President Nixon to President Trump's first inauguration, all those things happen. Now let's go to the other bookend. All right, and real quick, I noticed my son's coming through, so let me do this really quick. Should have done that before. All right, so you have your other bookend. So now this is your first bookend, and here's your second bookend. So you have President Trump, January the 20th, 2025. Now you got to listen to me and hang tight with me, because there was a little bit of difference there to bring the focal point to you. Never before have they had the wreath layering ceremony on January the 19th. So on January the 19th, they moved the wreath laying ceremony over here to January the 19th. All right, very key. But let's do the January the 20th, and then we'll work backwards, because it actually works better that way. So on January the 20th, they showed President Trump raise his right hand. Hand wasn't on the Bible, for a reason. During the debate with Biden, who wasn't real, wasn't ever president by laws, all right? But for people that don't know that, the debate with Biden, there was not an audience. Guess when the last time that was? JFK. Guess who the last president was that didn't put their hand on the Bible? JFK. All right? So, little things like that. Then, you had Eric Trump walking, when they walked in, before President Trump was about to take his oath, Eric standing there awkwardly, not just casual. He has his hands up high, doing this. And he's smiling at someone out in the audience. And Laura looks over his shoulder, and he lowers it a little bit, and then does this. Spearhead. Special operations. All right. President Trump's been doing this for many, many years. It's not a bad symbol. It don't even represent the Space Force. A lot of people have done that. Spearhead. All right. Special operations. So you saw that January the 20th. Raise your right hand. As soon as the flourishes started, dun 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 dun, bum ba da bum bum, bum ba da bum bum, bum ba da bum bum. There's 4 of them. 4 flourishes, then Hail to the Chief starts playing. January the 20th, 2025, the camera, because they moved it indoors, the camera would have been outside on the cannons. What did you see? 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, which is a 21 gun salute by definition. You also saw a commissioned officer present who just happened to have been wearing the same insignia, military intelligence, that was cohesive and consistent with January the 20th, 2017, President Trump, when he was giving his famous speech. And the 2 headbands that came down behind him, was a bunch of soldiers, but there were 2 headbands right beside him. Judge Advocate General and military intelligence. The same moment he was saying we were taking the power out of D.C. and giving it back to you, the people, headbands. Commissioned officer present, January the 20th, 2025, military intelligence, headband. All right. Bingo. 21 rounds fired, 4 cannons in the national capital region. All right, so let's go back to this over here. This bookend. Nixon, all the way to President Trump's first. Where were the cannons located? National capital region, not at Arlington. Come over here to this bookend. January the 20th, 2025. Where were the cannons located? National capital region, not at Arlington. So would anybody care to explain to me the middle, why Joe Biden is the only quote-unquote president, for the people that thinks he was president? Okay, I'll play devil's advocate. For the people that thinks he was real and he was really president, would you care to explain to me why January the 20th, 2021, of all the presidents out of military customs, which again, if you're gay and Buddhist, all right, so if you're a Christian, you probably disagree with homosexuality. Let's just go on let's just on the average say that, just for an analogy here. All right, military customs don't care if you're gay, Buddhist, atheist, whatever you are, witchcraft, whatever. If you believe that Elton John and his little pet spider monkey fly on a carpet in the middle of New Mexico over Taos and rolls up there and then rolls around and says, "Oh, I am the king of your castle," and then flies back down. They don't care. They don't care what you believe. If you served honorably, if you were honorably discharged on your DD-214, or you were honorably retired, you get a military funeral. You get a 21 gun salute. It depends on your rank if you get rifles or cannons, but you get a military funeral. All right? You get that. So, would you care to explain to me why you have a bookend from 1969 to 2017? You saw every soldier salute the motorcade. You also saw a commissioned officer present, Army Regulations 600-25, 2-3 cannon salutes at every one of these. All right. Then you come over here to January the 20th, 2025. You saw 4 cannons, 21 rounds, National Capital Region, not at Arlington, commissioned officer present. You saw all the National Guard saluting, and the Guard, all soldiers, saluting your president being inaugurated. But all of a sudden, now you have to explain why January the 20th, 2021, why Joe Biden is the only person in United States history, military and federal constitutional history. You have to explain why he had 3 cannons at Arlington National Cemetery. Now let's go back to January the 19th, 2025. They showed President Trump at Arlington. Did you see the cannons? Come on, Army, 20-something years, who just, oh, Darren Johnson's lying. I finally called him. Where were the freaking cannons, you idiot? Where were they? They didn't show the cannons at Arlington. Are the cannons always at Arlington? Yep. Did they show them? Nope. See why people who just want to be right, they want to be a face, propaganda, drama, publicity, whatever it may be. See why I don't care? You see why I don't have an image to maintain? You see why I deliver constantly all the time? Because I keep my oath the correct way. I give you stuff that empowers you. I give you stuff that cannot be denied because I'm following what's in place, put in place by the good guys, because I'm one of them. All right? So now, let's go back to January the 20th, 2021. 3 cannons at Arlington for Joe. Can you explain why 4 cannons, 21 guns were at Joint Base Andrews with President Trump the same day? The first time in history they showed 2 different cannon sets on the same day. 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired is a 21 gun salute by definition. The 4 cannons, 21 guns were with President Trump at Joint Base Andrews with a red carpet rollout on Air Force One. Would you care to explain to me why Joe Biden didn't have a red carpet rollout as he got on Air Force One on January the 20th, 2025? Would you care to explain to me why the camera was way back here and it only showed the back angle of the audience and it never zoomed in? Can you explain that? Can you explain again why Joe didn't have a red carpet rollout on his farewell going back? He didn't go back to Delaware. Air Force One flew to California. Make that make sense. Please make that make sense. Because those who want to argue that, excuse my language, you're shitting on every memorial grave in this nation. Again, military does not, it don't look at color, race, ethnicity, nationality. It don't do that. Now, there has to be balance and structure. That's what's going on in the military right now because the military started adapting to people versus people adapting to the military with certain things like the sex changes and all that. But outside of that, the military does not care about your religion and your faith and certain things. No, they don't make you be a Christian. They don't make you do this. They don't, none of that. All right, so you got to listen and make sure you know the differences of what's going on right now with the military and what they were funding and what was infiltrated in the leadership positions. You got to understand those little things. But other than that, military doesn't care about that. But you now have a bookend that separates everything from everything. You have a bookend. And it cannot be debunked. It just can't be. It will never be debunked because it's not debunkable. It's not a debunkable type subject. It's not a debunkable type topic. It's not. And that very one thing alone, shows you there's a special operation going on. Laws and orders show that, which is also what puts all these liberals in an atrocious place. It makes them look ignorant and incompetent, and it shows they really don't love the United States. They don't love America. They don't love you. They don't love the military. They don't love anything. At least the way they portray it, they don't. So, again, if they love America, then you say, if you love America, and if you love the United States, if you love the military, then you will put aside all of your personal feelings, your personal emotions, your personal beliefs. You'll put that aside for a moment and look at what's invoked and in place. Because 3 cannons at Arlington when you go to arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil. The official military, not a .com, not a .net, not a .org, not a anything like that. .mil, official military. If you have a loved one and they were in the military and you didn't know much about military and you wanted to know could they be buried at Arlington, or what benefits do they have as a soldier for 21 gun salutes and soldiers appearing at their funeral, etc., 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 you would go to arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil. That'd be a great resource for you because they may be qualified to be buried at the most prestigious place, one of them. There's memorial graves like that all over the nation. There's memorial cemeteries, I might say. But Arlington National Cemetery, if you wanted to know, do they qualify for it, and maybe their last wishes, maybe they knew, and their last wishes in the will says, I'd like to be buried at Arlington, you go to arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil and you can get on the phone, you can email. Go to Google, type in 21 gun salute, arlingtonnationalcemetery.mil. Enter. It's going to make you even hit a little accept it thing. I accept this, not the cookies and all that, but it says accept. Then it'll scroll to the bottom. It says the 21 gun salute is not to be confused with the 3 volley salute by rifle or cannon seen or heard at Arlington. The 3 volley salute is a military funeral honors. So, again, as I say, you have a bookend from 1969 to 2017 of every inauguration in the National Capital Region, not at Arlington. You also have visuals of some of those presidents going to Arlington. You never see the cannons at Arlington. Every 21 gun salute in the National Capital Region had a commissioned officer present, and also the soldiers saluted the motorcade. January the 20th, 2025, National Capital Region, commissioned officer present, 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, and in the middle sits this outlier. January 20th, 2021, old Joe had 3 cannons at Arlington National Cemetery. When the flourishes took place, on the you didn't hear the cannons go off. Joe was never president, and he was never real. Laws and orders show that. This whole thing is a special operation. All of it. That's why I tell you to put brackets around it. No, we're not going to stop and end right here. But for visual sake, put brackets around that. It is an operation, the whole thing. That's also why President Trump, when you go to Google, again, that's why you cannot find a White House military office archived for President Trump from 2017 to January the 20th, 2021. You will not find an archive for that. The last White House military office archive is Barack Hussein Obama. That's very key because every one of you thought you have seen the president fly on Air Force One, right? You thought you thought you saw Biden fly on Air Force One, Air Force Twos, and Marine One. Well, the White House military office are all of the operations and logistics of Air Force One and Marine One. So explain why there's not a White House military office archive for President Trump. Also explain why the last National Security Strategy publication on the Department of Defense.mil, explain why the last is President Trump's from 2017. And I could keep going. Now, before I get to your second bookend, most of you have been seeing me post it anyway, but before I get to the second bookend, there's 4 ways. 4 ways the military pairs with federal. executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties. All four of those must be signed by the president and or declared by the president. Think about that again. It's really that simple. You want to put a liberal in their place? You want to show how they don't know the old saying, crap from Shinola? I won't say the other word, even though I've already said enough today. You want to prove that they don't know anything about anything? There's four ways. Military pairs with federal. And it's all presidential. Executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties. It's that simple. So again, as you read, an executive order doesn't require any legislation. Pen, they don't use cheap pens like this, but pen, paper. You've already heard the breakdown what an executive order does. Who does it, how it's written up. Executive order. A national emergency, all right, when you look at the War Powers Act, what did it say again? It says that it provides that the president can send the United States Armed Forces into action abroad only by declaration of war, by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by attack upon the United States, its territories, or possessions, or its armed forces. All right. President declares a national emergency. Well, watch this. Title 50, Chapter 34, Section 1601. I'm going to read it word for word. I normally can quote, obviously, but I'm going to read it word for you. I'm on uscode.house.gov, your official federal government. Section 1601, termination of existing declared emergencies. All powers and authorities possessed by the president, any other officer or employee of the federal government, or any executive agency as defined in Section 105 of Title V as a result of the existence of any declaration of national emergency in effect on September the 14th, 1976, are terminated 2 years from September the 14th, 1976. They use that year because that's when they put that in here. So they're saying if a national emergency is declared on February the 16th, 2025, if it is not terminated or revoked by February the 16th, 2027, it automatically terminates after that day. That's what that's saying. Now, a lot of you that follow me already, if you're new here, welcome. But if you follow me, you've seen people comment. I had a comment today. I didn't see the full comment, but it said something about presidents always continue executive orders with national emergencies. That is the biggest crock-a-doo-doo you could ever shove down your throat in any situation. All right. The other thing, and I like to use this because I like examples. I like to give people examples, but there's a certain turd who entered my life a couple years ago. A douche canoe, as we call them. I won't say all the other terms we say in the military, but we'll just go light today with a douche canoe or a twat waffle. All right. And their IQ is very, very slacking. But these are perfect for a reason, because you now have a bookend. It's perfect to show you how to use your discernment, how to, one, empower yourself first, know what to feed yourself, what to consume, and know what to put away, right? So, again, discernment. And then you'll know who to listen to and who to stay away from. Because only you can do that. No one can sit with you. Someone like me can't sit with you all day long and say, don't click on that. That's propaganda. Move away from that. I can't tell you that. I also have to be careful because I do have a lot of good friends out there that have podcasts and they've spent their time building their podcast versus me who went globally viral and boom, people just were there, right? But it's because I empower you with information that is the straight up operation, right? It's the straight up legislation, laws, and orders that the military is using and federal and how they pair that are currently invoked as we speak. So when you see comments in comment boxes, see a lot of people think, well, I can't talk to the host, or I can't talk to, I've sent emails and messages, I can't get to them. Well, people will start engaging in the comment box. And people will engage. First thing people do, naturally, is go, well, this guy in the comment box said he was in the military 25 years and Derek Jonhson don't know what he's talking about, and I did this, 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 and I did that. And they gravitate to what? Experience, resumes. But you can't no more prove that that person did that than Adam's house cat taking a dump in your neighbor's backyard. You can't prove that if you weren't there. You can't prove that. So things like what we're dealing with, laws and orders, well, again, you pay taxes, don't you? Well, some are fraudulent. But wouldn't you want to know which ones are fraudulent and which ones we probably need to adhere to? Yes. All right, but that's a what? That's something that has been established years ago and may need reestablishing, which they do. But at the same time, again, you got to know these things and where they originated from. Well, the whole reason we're even on this podcast is because our founders started a war. Our founders said enough's enough. They had treaties before. They had the Magna Carta. They had a bunch of things before, but never worked. And then they finally, these brilliant men, sat down, not old men either, they were young. They said, we have a solution. We're going to have to fight for it first, but then we're going to put this together. They wrote all these brilliant things. Brilliant. And it wasn't a lot of them. Matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson he's really the most accredited because he wrote most of everything. All right, one of them. But again, you have an origin in place. The whole reason we're here is because of that origin. So what we have right now are people like me, President Trump. Well, we'll just put him first. President Trump's the face of the whole thing. You have generals in the background. You have world leaders who also know what's going on, joint partners as they call them. You have people who say, look, we can fix this. We don't need to abolish it. We don't need to restart all over. We don't need another kind of war, a world war, a revolutionary war. We don't need bloodshed like that. We can fix this. But we need to do something that doesn't incite violence, doesn't incite civil disruption or civil war. We have things we can do to distract Americans because they don't know what's going on. They're like little toddlers. The toddler picks up a knife and thinks, oh, it's shiny and bright, but they don't realize that knife could cut them. So the parent comes over there and says, whoop, takes it away from them. Well, the parent knows that the toddler don't know that knife could cut them, could do harm to them. So the parent says, I'll be okay with them crying and whining and complaining a little while because that toddler had no idea that sharp object could be of harm to it. That is what is going on with what's in place. Because so many Americans are used to drama, propaganda, confusion, manipulation, gaslighting, and people who take terms, twist it, manipulate it to fit their narratives versus going, hey, I don't care how you live, what you do, I'll protect you. I'll keep you safe, but we got to have a foundation. We're not going to pay for this in federal. We're not going to pay for it in state. Whatever those topics are, that's what's taking place. It's a resetting of that. All right, so when you want to look at what's in place, you want to know the discernment you need. I like to use examples. So example, that old saying, I get the last laugh. Well, if you were doing right, like my dad, remember what I started off with the podcast with? If you were doing right by what was right, by what's been put in place, right? And like the Bible says, we're judged based off of our what? Our fruits, right? Every one of you judges your partners or your friends based off of how they treat you, right? I mean, if your partner or friend or whatever treated you bad all the time, I mean, you'd be crazy to keep going back. You'd try to hold them to a standard. You'd say, hey, you're not going to call me that anymore, or you're not going to say this to me anymore, and you have your ors, and only you know your tolerance level. Here's your or, maybe just one or, maybe 3 ors, it may be 5 ors, but you have a tolerance level, all right? So you go by what? A standard in place. So again, what the military is operating with, what the federals operate with, is a blueprint, a standard, a plan. So I like to use people who show their asses, all right? Who just wanted to be a name, face, popular, whatever, but especially if they do something that's stupid, like trying to steal a federal trademark or trying to frame somebody. All right, what did that have to do with laws and orders? What did that have to do with a guy simply telling you, here's the laws and vote? Really think about it. I mean, this is how crazy this is. I tell you all the laws and orders that have already been passed years ago and the ones that were passed recently and say, hey, here's how they pair. Here's what's in vote. And you got a person and a group of people who try to steal a federal trademark and try to frame you for just utilizing your First Amendment. So watch. Bear with me. So don't need no comments from people, oh, you need to move on. No, watch. It's going to show you. It's also going to show people what to listen to and what not to listen to. It's going to teach you discernment. Because if you don't go straight to the horse's mouth, or you don't go straight to the plan in place, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your energy, and you're going to end up angry, mad, bitter, frustrated. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to be in a bad mood. You don't have to be. So example, this is fun. Here's another bookend. This douche canoe who was recruited to follow me around all over social media and was commenting in the comment boxes, and or when you, the patriot, started sharing what I share, giving credit where it's due, right? When you started sharing that, this douche canoe's in the comment box. And this douche canoe, all right, this fairy tale fart, all right, is over there telling somebody that executive orders and national emergencies are just something that presidents do. All right. You know what that says? You know what that's saying? That's like saying that students are given books. That's how simple that is. That is literally like saying tires are on vehicles. There's a door to a house. I mean, this is how low IQ that comment was. Don't show what executive orders are in place right now and what they're doing. All right, so that shows that their motives and intent wasn't whoever these audience were to go read and see what's in place right now. Whether you like it or not, that's not the thing. You can absolutely read everything that I put together and not like it, but you shouldn't shoot the messenger. The classic shoot the messenger. You should go, holy crap. Well, I don't like what's in place, so I need to know who my congressmen and women are and why they're passing this and go above them, because that's the framework of the Constitution. They represent you. I don't represent you. See, that's how that works. So this low IQ individual is over here in a comment box saying, doo-doo is brown. All right. Whatever. Man, we could sit here and have some fun with all kinds of slogans, but that's so basic. But here's the funny thing about it. This was like a year ago. Before the what? Bookend. All right. But now, with the bookend, all these people who claim to be patriots, claim to be Republicans, claim to be conservatives, claim to be President Trump supporters, all these people who said that military laws and executive orders, everything that I talk about are conspiracy theories. This was special design for me by a cool fella in Nashville. Military laws and orders are not conspiracy theory. All right. Now we have a bookend. You had it, and you've had it since January the 20th, 2025, but now you have a bookend. All right, now watch this. So, old Douche Canoe and many others out there, they just wanted a name. They wanted a face for all the wrong motives, intents, especially stealing stuff, theft, trying to frame somebody. Well, think about what they do to President Trump. Think about lawfare. Think about the lawfare that he's talked about. Now, a lot of this was part of the strategic operations, special operations, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, and I talk about that elsewhere. But today, we're just talking about the bookends. Think about that. You think about the welfare of Americans and our people alone, who are our citizens, Americans. All right, think about public safety, everything we started the podcast with. Now we come down to this. All right. Naturally, we do get up in arms with people who think different than us, that create harm and or bad moods and or puts you in a bad spirit, negative, whatever it may be, negative energy, etc. Right? But in reality, we're supposed to want liberals to come over to the right side. Not right meaning conservative, not right meaning like that. Don't take the word right out of context, but meaning, look, we got to have, at our population level, we have to have something that works for all of us the best to its ability. Federal, states, local government, and then you have your tribal governments. So everything has to coexist in the right context, not out of the wrong context, not going over here to certain groups and not these career politicians who created their own checks and balances and created their own organizations, created their own loopholes, created their own stock trader information, created their own checks and balances. See, there was this chaos, right? And these liberals, especially liberals, Democrats, were taken up for the very people who played and preyed on their emotions, feelings, and pocketbooks, all of our pocketbooks, but especially them, because they're the ones taken up for the very ones who screwed them over, right? They're still paying taxes. They're still paying unwanted and unconstitutional taxes and supporting the people who set it up on them. So see, when you see a comment over here saying national emergencies are continued for this, there is a definitive line drawn in the sand, November the 8th, 2016. President Trump. And by laws and orders can prove, the laws and orders currently invoked can prove that President Trump has never been a president by constitutional presidential standards. He's been a wartime president by constitutional and military laws and orders invoked. It's a special operation. When he says the best is yet to come, sure, a liberal right now could say, you guys say that all the time. Where is this yet at? It's a special operation. It's not over yet. All right, he has given you dates to hang on to. He gave you Memorial Day 2025 and July the 4th, 2026. He tells you everything you need to hear if you'll listen to him. Then you got to go listen and apply what's in military law, how it pairs with federal, and know the difference, but also know how they're unique, how they pair, the four ways, and then also remove your divorce is a better word. Divorce your emotions, divorce your feelings from what you thought you knew, and apply what's in place. And even if it gets confusing, always go back to your foundation and start all over and work your way back up to wherever you felt like you got led into confusion. Go back to your basis and your foundation. So this person who followed me around, now I get the last laugh. I already had it. But now, for you out there and your friends and family who have ostracized you, criticized you, mocked you, ridiculed you, laughed at you, called you names, don't talk to you anymore, separated from you, divorced you, all kinds of things. You've gone through it. I know there are patriots out there who have experienced every one of those, if not all of them and or some of them. This is for you. This is why, again, if you're doing the right thing from the beginning and you're following principles, standards, etiquette, protocol, etc., you don't have to worry about anything. It's like the old saying, truth doesn't have to remember anything, because you just live by it. Now that word truth and facts and all that's been diluted as well because of all the evil in the world and what they've done with it, manipulation and gaslighting with that terminology. But, again, there is a definitive line in the sand, November the 8th, 2016, to present day. You have a couple of bookends that just stand out more than any. One is your cannons. All right, again, because those don't have any, once again, emotions or feelings attached because they're military customs. It don't have anything to do with ethnicity, nationality, race, faith, etc. So there's one big bookend. Your second big bookend is this. So, like the guy that I read, again, we'll read it one more time. A judge cannot overturn a law as written. An executive order is not a law. A president cannot create a law without Congress. So a judge has every right to overturn an executive order if it's found to be unconstitutional. First off, you, liberal, you acknowledge MAGA. All right, so you have an awareness about saying that MAGA, Make America Great Again, Republicans, conservatives, patriots, you're acknowledging that you know the difference in Republicans, conservatives, patriots, and then everything that you think you stand on, liberal, Democrat, etc. So you acknowledge that. That's an acknowledgement right there, saying MAGA, for you MAGAs who don't understand, for MAGAs who don't understand the Constitution. So there's that. 2, you're using the word Constitution. All right. The only thing you know about it is the word. All right. The other thing is the Constitution, in that context of what this person put out, is like cherry picking all these random things. Right. You use the Constitution but don't know anything about it. Then says a judge cannot overturn a law. An executive order is not a law. A president cannot create a law without Congress. Well, the Constitution is the highest law in the land, right? So there's that. So that's already in place. Then executive orders have been around since George Washington. So again, Article 2 explains this stuff. So there's your Constitution. All right. So now here's your bookend. President Trump, starting January the 20th, 2017, from January the 20th, 2017 to January the 20th, 2021, President Trump signed and declared 11 executive orders with 11 national emergencies attached. Now, we're not talking about all the executive orders that don't have a national emergency. We're talking about just executive orders with national emergencies paired, attached, alone. 11. Now, you got to go back to your War Powers Act again and read what it says again. It provides that the president can send the United States Armed Forces into action abroad only by declaration of war by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territories or possessions, or its armed forces. Now, there's 2 ways to slice this pie. If all these people out there who thought they were trying to debunk me are saying that presidents always declare national emergencies, then you just proved my point even better. Because there's a national emergency that was declared by Jimmy Carter in 1979 that has been continued every 2 years. It's still active to this day. So would you care to explain to me why there's a national emergency that's been declared and signed every 2 years that's over 45 years old? Is it an emergency anymore? Why do we even call it an emergency if it's been continued every 2 years for over 45 years? How is that a national emergency? So you prove the point if you want to say that, oh, that's just what presidents do. See, that's how atrocious liberals look. And if they're not a liberal, that's how really atrocious they look. But especially if they have some kind of intent or motive to create publicity or want a face or want a name, they're even more atrocious. It's already atrocious enough to be a liberal who don't know anything about the Constitution. It's even more that you go in there and say that because, again, you the people are ultimately what keeps me where I'm at. I wouldn't have a platform without all of you. I wouldn't. But mine's not to have a platform again. I have the books that I have. That are the only ones out there. Timestamp, baby, and can't be debunked because of laws and orders invoked. All right, so there's two ways to slice pie. The other thing is this. The other way to do it. All right. Even if those national emergencies weren't in place from Jimmy Carter to President Trump's first term, why did Congress in 1973, Congress is the one who amended the War Powers Act. They amended it and gave the president the authority to do what? Declare a national emergency and use the armed forces. So that's why no liberal has said to President Trump, pointed at him, no liberal has said you can't do that. That's against the law. Only the dumb, atrocious ones who aren't in Congress, like the examples I use on X. He's a threat to democracy and he's a threat to the Constitution and he's violating the Constitution. Only the low-level hanging fruit who aren't in a position are saying that. The ones who are in position never said, you can't do that, President Trump. That's against the law. No, because it is the law. This War Powers Act was amended in 1973. We're talking about 52 years, depending on what month that was. May 1973. So in May will be 52 years is how old this is. Hasn't been amended since then. So explain to me again why I always talk about where Title 50, Chapter 33, the War Powers Act, the last amendment to it was what? Section 1550, December the 20th, 2019. That is Congress doing that. That's why you also have to go over to joint publication from the military 3-57, where it specifically says that no, Title 10 authority is generally prohibited. It says it's generally prohibited from using the Department of Defense armed forces with civilian operations. Generally prohibited unless what? There's that key word, unless what? Unless deemed and authorized by whom? The Constitution and Congress. So joint publication 3-57 military, joint publication means Joint Chief of Staff, joint publication 3-57 says that yes, Title 10, presidential, Title 10 is President, Uniform Code of Military Justice, military law. Title 10 is generally prohibited from using the Department of Defense, your regular armed forces, which means just your basic active duty, regular armed forces with civilian operations unless what? Authorized by Congress or the Constitution. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 is your Congress doing that. Title 50 is also linked to irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, clandestine operations, secret operations. That's why it pays to know laws and orders. That's why it pays to know military first. That's why it pays to listen to what you're listening to. Propaganda, drama is always going to be there because now we have social media. Now we have everybody who thinks they know something. Everybody thinks they're an investigative journalist. Everybody thinks they're a researcher. Everybody thinks that. Not everybody raised their right hand and took an oath. Not everybody is an operator. There's a lot of regurgitators. There's a lot of posers, a lot of brown nosers. There's a lot of that. You want to know what's going on? You better get a military veteran like myself in your life. You better do that because there's a lot of people out there that's going to take you right on to the Kool-Aid and you're going to drink it because you think, like that email, like I told them, with all due respect, you don't need any more material. There's no new material. There's nothing new. Everything you need are in laws and orders currently invoked because now you have a bookmark. You have a book stamp. You have a bookend with this. President Trump, 11 executive orders, 11 national emergencies. 8 of those were continued 4 years in a row. 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies continued 4 years in a row by Joe Biden. Every one of those executive orders, every one of them, by the content of the executive order and what it invoked, every single one of those 8 executive orders, 8 national emergencies that have been continued by Joe Biden 4 years in a row, baby, are the very executive orders that are deporting the migrants, the illegal migrants, that is, the very executive orders with national emergencies that are freezing the assets of all those who were illegally funding the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist military. It's the very executive orders with national emergencies that are combating the opioids crisis, drug trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. Every executive order that's been continued by Joe are the very executive orders and national emergencies that are destroying the Democratic Party, destroying the liberal logic, destroying the global alliance, also known as draining the swamp. So every freaking liberal out there now has to explain why you want to use the word Constitution, you want to use the words laws and orders and threats and this. Why did your babbling baboon, why did he continue 8 executive orders when it tells you right here that a president can do what? Revoke it. Why didn't Joe revoke 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies? Oh no, wait. What did it say about national emergencies again? They automatically terminate 2 years unless they're what? Continued. All Joe Biden had to do was let the 8 national emergencies expire. Terminate on their own. He didn't even have to pick up a pen and continue it on paper. All he had to do was let them expire. Terminate on its own. But no, for you who think Joe is real, for you who think Joe is president, oh, babbling, stammering, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., who all the kids wanted to touch his cold and hairy legs in the pool. Joe Biden took a piece of paper, according to you who thinks he was real, according to you who thinks he was president, and he went, I'm going to continue this executive order that's going to deport the illegal migrants in 2025. I'm going to continue this executive order that's going to roast my ass for having my hands in the cookie jar with China and the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist military, which my son also benefited from. I'm going to continue this executive order. I'm also going to continue this executive order for election interference that's also going to roast my ass and chaff my ass and also delete my ass from history. I'm going to continue this executive order for lawfare and all the other things that my people established. I'm going to continue this executive order for 4 years. And then I'm going to allow President Trump to get back in office to utilize this executive order with this national emergency. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue this. I'm also going to continue this executive order that's going against human rights abuse. That's also going to expose all the shit that my people have been doing all these years to people and quelling their voice and quelling their opportunities and quelling all these other things. I'm going to continue. No, I'm not going to let them terminate automatically. I'm going to continue them. Me and my pen and this piece of paper is my power and authority as the president. I'm going to continue 8 executive orders by President Trump from 2017 to 2020. I'm going to continue all those over to where he gets power and authority again, and all he has to do is say, all right, Tom Homan, let's go, baby. All you veterans that know what's going on, you remember your oath, you ready, baby? Let's go. All right, that's exactly what that did. And anybody who says otherwise is an ignorant ass who either needs to be deported themselves or needs to be deleted from social media. I don't care if they're liberal, Republican, conservative, claim to be patriot. If they're spreading fear, propaganda, confusion, all kinds of other things just to create algorithms, just to create comments, whatever. They need to be removed. They need to be out of here. Simple as that. Because again, there's a definitive line in the sand that was drawn November the 8th, 2016. Now the plan was in place long before then. But that is your definitive line in the sand. I was the one that took the picture. Now, anybody could have taken it, but you've seen it all over the internet. I have proof of that in my documents, but it doesn't matter. It's not about being right or wrong again, but I'm just making a point with this. November the 8th, 2016. But it was really in the wee hours of the morning on November the 9th, 4:56 a.m. Central Standard Time. I took a photo. I couldn't sleep. I was so stoked when President Trump, when they installed him. I took that photo of him and Putin side by side on it was Fox News at that moment. It said, ready for reset. The word reset was in single quotations. Single quotations, ladies and gentlemen, is focus on that word. We want you to focus on this word. Reset, single quotations. That's why so many ladies follow me, guys. All of you hoity-toity guys out there, you breathe with your chest and you just want to be right and you don't even know anything about the laws and orders you served under, especially if you're a veteran. Ladies lead the way. Females are leading the way. The patriots, they're the true patriots in all this because, again, females will. When a guy ever says out of his mouth, that's a fact, go look it up. I'm telling you, a woman is going to do that. They're going to go look it up. They're going to go read it. They're going to comb it over with a fine-tooth comb 10 ways to Alaska and back. And they're going to find out if it was a fact, if you were really telling. All right, they're going to find out. So, again, you want to know why I have a platform? It's because of the female patriots out there. And I don't mislead anybody. I take you right to the water. Right to the H2O, right to the source. It's right there. So again, President Trump, line in the sand, reset. Ready for reset. What reset? Have you not seen the decentralization of the banks? Have you not seen them talking about currency all over the world? Have you not seen them talking about BRICS? The dollar, the strength of the dollar. I mean, all of these things. And those 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies alone, the content of those, the content's what separates them from any other executive order, any other national emergency. The content of those 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that Joe continued for 4 years are the very thing that, again, is destroying the Democratic Party, liberal logic as they call it, the global alliance, the swamp, the establishment, all that. So now you have a bookend. And now this is why it looks atrocious, and it's perfect to even not just pick on liberals. All right? Because they're innocent too. If they have a brain and they really love America, then they'll use their brain and they'll listen. And they'll go apply what is in law and order that protects them. Doesn't hurt them at all. So now I get to pick on someone who claims to be a soldier, claims to be, I protect the Constitution and all this. The one who tried to steal my federal trademark, tried to frame me, also tried to steal a client of mine in the music world. All right? I mean, all this stuff, intent and motives are what you need to go into a court and then also show loss of whatever it is, right? Loss of income, etc. So now, don't worry about the liberals. Liberals are already in the category. So see, you out there that want discernment, need discernment, want to know who to listen to, what to listen to, and what you're reading, what you don't need anything. Now, again, I know great people with podcasts. I go on some great podcasts. But I have actually limited what I go on because of what people keep pushing out there. We don't need to keep going down in history for future's sake talk shows. Sitting around and just talking about, oh, well, so-and-so and this and this and that and other. And the congresswoman said this and that and other, this. If it's propaganda. If it's law-based and or hurts your pocketbook, okay, let's talk about it. Other than that, a lot of these shows, quote unquote, is regurgitation of drama and propaganda. And so like this person and a lot of others out there, now I have a bookend to say, well, now guess what? You just show the people. You show the people that you're not about them. You never were about them. You're about publicity. You're about clicks, algorithms, wanting to be famous, wanting to be known, notoriety, all or maybe all of the above. So that's why it's important for some people who follow me to know that I'm in an operation too. I'm a part of it. I'm on a certain level, but I'm not way up here. But I'm on a certain level of it. I've already been confirmed for that. I already have a DOD pass. I can go around with the military and the press anywhere I want to go. I have that. All right. So there's that. But you judge people by the fruits of the Spirit, the fruits of what they show you. The Bible even tells you that again. So that is how you set your foundation. And then even if you're someone, again, who don't like what's going on, you still need to know what's going on. But people who are in charge are not going to listen to you if you come to them with propaganda, drama, yelling, cussing, kicking, screaming, angry, mad, sad, bitter, frustrated, whatever those are, negative, anything. No one's going to listen to you. You want to be taken serious? Know the subjects. Know the topics. Know what's going on. Talk intellectually. Talk like you have some sense about you. Talk and act like you have an IQ. You want to be taken serious, do that. Because what, again, did stealing a trademark have to do with my First Amendment? What did trying to frame me have to do with my First Amendment? What did trying to steal clients of mine have to do with my First Amendment? So see, that is a perfect example. It ain't great for new people who might see this, but at the same time, when you follow me, you'll know, again, where I am in history and where God put me. All right, and that I've, from day one, been consistent, haven't misled you, haven't changed. I still eat Vienna sausages. I don't care. Me and RFK are we're gonna have a struggle. I am. I'm just like you. Jalapeno Vienna sausages are my favorite. I don't care where they're made and what they're made from. My buddy Wasim Syed's got 1 million followers on Instagram. I don't care what he says. Hey, it's going to be a struggle. RC Cola, going to be a struggle. I'm going to have a struggle to put that down. Even if Wasim said, bro, it's going to kill you in 5 years, I'm going to be like, bro, y'all going to have to put me in a straitjacket. Like, someone's going to have to feed me. Literally, because I love this stuff. Right? The first thing that Wasim beat me up over was candy corn. I'm like, oh my God. I love candy corn. You know, and it don't matter what patriot or Republican conservative said, oh, that's not good for you. I'm like, well, it's good for me. My taste buds don't judge. My taste buds says, hey, I like this stuff. But Wasim says it's not good for this right here. And I'm like, well, it's good for this right here. And then, I've never had any problems with it coming on out, if you know what I mean. So we're all human, right? But when you're dealing with military and you're dealing with federal, those are higher ups. Yes, everybody's going to have an opinion, but again, what's the difference in an opinion and a First Amendment? Very big difference, all right? Because when there comes to public safety, which means life and death, harm, and things of that nature, then all of this other stuff gets cast aside. Your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs, your personal beliefs, and all that. When it comes to life and death, when the military steps in, when the military government, military occupation, continuity of operation, when that steps in, we're in a different ball game, different territory. That's why it's important. That's why you have bookends now. Your canons are a great bookend, and then the executive orders. Because again, and I'll wrap up here with this. If everything that I talked about, and I do talk about, which are straight up, again, military laws, orders, regulations, customs, and then how they pair 4 ways with federal, executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties. If it's all hogwash, and that didn't happen, even though I have full proof, and then also, don't matter, I'm advertising because I can. I'm the only one, baby. Only one. Only one in U.S. history now. Timestamp that shows the dash between 45-47 right here. It's timestamp. All these big name authors, all these big name dudes out there that written books for years, all this other stuff, yada yada yada. December 2023, early, I put this bad boy out. It's the only book that explains the dash via military laws and federal laws, executive orders, proclamations, treaties, etc., but also special operations. All right, Special Operations Command. Part 2 is bigger, obviously. 596 pages. Don't panic. All you people like Reed from Texas that don't like to read. All right. But it's all short. A lot of photos. All right. Mainly a lot of photos, as you can see. And then the paragraphs like that are short little excerpts. They're not long at all. All right. If you fall asleep during that, then you know, how do you watch TV shows? All right. Then in the back, there's maybe all that right there. In the back, it's only 3 chapters, but in the back, it's like 100 pages of special operations, Title 10, Title 50, and then irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, how it all pairs, how President Trump, the generals, the military, the joint partners around the world leaders, etc., are all part of this. It outlines that. All right, so part 2, part 1 and part 2. So obviously you got the brown looking and the blue. I'm also going to do a part 3 because we're going to cover President Trump's 2025 to 2028. And I'm taking the time out of my life to do that for you. We have a bookend. You'll have the first, the middle, and the end for history's sake as well. That way, God forbid this ever happens again 200, 300, 400 years from now, especially not 100. But God forbid it happens. None of our great-grandchildren and all, etc., we'll be able to say, we don't know what to do. We never heard of this. No, they're going to have a book that says this is what you can do lawfully if you have to use it. All right. No, we shouldn't never want the military to step in all the time, but we had to again. So that's what separates it. So here's the proof. Again, here's another bookend, if you will. All right. Even though it's just a tie-in, really. So you have your canons, you have your executive orders. Your executive orders from 2017 to 2020 that are still active right now that Joe continued. So if everything to do with these books are hogwash, 1, they wouldn't be #1 bestsellers, all right? But 2, the last executive order on record for Joe, if you went to Google right now and you typed in executive orders, go to your house, go to uscode.house.gov. But if you go to the list of all the executive orders, it'll show that Biden had, I think it's 13 in, let's see, let me make sure real quick because I'm sitting here. I think it's 13. Where'd it go? Yeah, it was 13. So in 2025, there was only 13 that quote unquote Biden had. All right. The last executive order for history's sake. Executive Order 14146 by Biden. Partial revocation of Executive Order 13961. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, it is hereby orders as follows. Revocation. Sections 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7 of Executive Order 13961 of December the 7th, 2020, governance and integration of federal mission resilience are hereby revoked. All right, so if everything that I outline for you, the people, is hogwash, military is hogwash, military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, paired with federal executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties that are all outlined in a strategic blueprint and plan from 2017 to present day. And you could even include what Congress did in 2016 that added to what was going to take place in 2017, because President Trump told you on January the 20th, 2025 at the Capital One Arena that this was a political operation. When you're sitting around with your friends and family, the ones you can talk government to, how many times have you used the word operation in politics? How many times have you used the words white flag of surrender in politics? Never, because they're not political or government terms. They're military from the Law of War Manual. All right, and I've already broken all those down. But again, President Trump told you on January the 20th, 2025 that you've been watching a political operation for 9 years, but he said actually it's been more like 20. He tells you when this plan was put into place. He tells you that. All right. When you go over to Special Operations Command, all right, go to Google, type in 2016 Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, enter. Pull that up. Pull that document up. Read the whole thing, but especially go to page 11, a diagram. It looks like a pyramid. On the top few lines, it says overt operations. On the bottom, it says covert operations. Guess what covert operations are? Title 50. All right. Guess what that whole Special Operations Command talks about? Title 10, Title 50, Executive Order 12333, assassinations. All right, from who? President Ronald Reagan. Who did President Trump put in his office recently? Probably President Ronald Reagan. Okay. All right, so then it talks about clandestine. It talks about government in exile, which is what you witnessed from January 20, 2021 to January 20, 2025, a government exile. Puppet state, World War II tactic that was used in World War II, where they installed certain people, actors. Special operations requires actors. It requires people who might be playing a good or a bad role. All right, so that's how I'm going to end this. Is this. If all this is hogwash, if all the laws and orders invoked are hogwash that outline a strategic plan and blueprint in place, a strategic operation, if it's all hogwash, then why would Joe, if he was real, and if he was president, for those of you out there that still struggle with that, why would Joe revoke an executive order put into place by President Trump on December the 7th, 2020, that is the continuity of government for the executive branch? It's the executive branch who are the ones, the president, it's the executive branch who issues and signs executive orders. So why would Joe revoke President Trump's Executive Order 13961, that was an executive order for a continuity of operations, a continuity of government? You can't revoke something that hasn't been invoked. I should end there, but I'm not. Here's how you also tie it in. Is this. So either Joe Biden, you have two options, ladies and gentlemen. You have two. 1, 2. Two options. Now, the hat drop, the mic drop's already happened. The book stamps with the cannons, military customs, military traditions, your executive orders being continued would make no sense, because the very orders that Joe, if you thought he was real, thought he was president, the very orders that he continued by President Trump are the very ones destroying all of the global swamp, the global alliance, the Democratic Party, the liberals, etc. That would make no sense. So really, again, the liberals and Democrats should be mad at Joe. And then also all the Republicans, conservatives, and patriots. You've heard this. I'm about to say it. You heard it. You heard a lot of brown nosers and paper pushers and all these others out there that want a name and a face. They said what? They said that Obama was behind the strings. It ain't Joe. Joe's not really in power. Joe's not doing anything. Kamala's not doing. Obama's back here pulling the strings. If Obama was back there pulling strings, why didn't Obama get Joe to revoke those executive orders and then also let the national emergencies that were in executive orders terminate? So now it leads to this: special operations. A lot of you never knew about special operations because you weren't a part of the military and you didn't know they existed. All right? Some of you might have knew they existed, but you didn't study them. And what does that consist of? What's it entail? Laws, etc. What's needed to invoke those? What's needed to implement a plan, and etc., etc., etc. You can go on and on and on with that. But you have to have, in special operations, you have to have actors. So a lot of people, Navy SEALs, and then your Green Berets, etc., special forces, your, all your special teams and different people, they have people who have to blend in. So they may have to look like the enemy for a while. So a lot of Americans struggle with this one thing. One thing with subsidiaries. One, you struggle with death. You focus too much on death, and then you want to use your whatever it is, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, to go after somebody like me who says, look, death exists. It's inevitable. But in the military, there's a scenario, here's your subsidiaries, where if you can save 10 million, so you got an option. If you can, I'll do it like this. I'll say, all right, y'all, we have two options. We got to run this operation. And there's two ways to do it. One, we can save 10 million people, but we might lose 1 to 10,000. Or we can do this operation here, but we're going to lose a lot more people than we save. Which one do you want? You only have two options. See, a lot of people don't want to apply that. Most people are comfortable with their little rigmarole and arguing and fussing and propaganda and drama and all this other stuff. You don't want a solution. You don't want to cure the problem. You want to treat the symptom, which is what a lot of doctors do, right? They just treat the symptom. They don't want to cure the problem. So now you only have two options. You only have two. Because you have a bookend. All right, so either all laws and orders, except from military and federal, are all hogwash. And if they're all hogwash, then we need to all abolish it and create something new. But that's going to require a war. Because there's a lot of people who don't want to abolish what we have in place. We're saying, hey, we didn't have to abolish it, we can fix it. We got that. If you will put your emotions and feelings aside and come over here to what we're doing, then you'll see that it's going to benefit you as well. But if there were a group of people that said, I don't want that, then guess what that's going to mean? Well, us will say, well, if you want something different, then you got to fight us for it. And if you can't fight us legislatively and win by the majority, then your only other option is to grab you a weapon and let's do this thing. You don't want that. And you ain't going to do that. Liberals and Democrats have proven they ain't going to do that. They don't want that. So there you go. You're stuck with us who says, look, we know how to fix it. But it required distractions. It required special operations. It required treating Americans like toddlers they are because they're acting like it. You don't want to be called that? Then stop acting like it. It's really simple. So now you only have two options. Because if you believe in laws and orders, it's clear as clear can get what's in store, what's in place, what's invoked, and what's taking place if you've read, studied, and applied it. So now you only have two options. Those of you who have read, studied, you only have two options. Either Biden is exactly who President Trump said he is, crime family Biden, laced for 46 years with China, Ukraine, etc. We also know his colored past with Justice Thomas. We also know he said the N-word in his past. Now, people can be forgiven. If African Americans can forgive someone for saying a word back in the day based on the actions they've done all the years, okay, but still, it's on record that he used it. It's on record that he was a racist for years ago. He's a chameleon, right? He's changed with what? He's changed not with quote-unquote times or changed with faith. He changed with pocketbook, right? Every one of these politicians only changed based on pocketbook. Not because they're a good person, not because, I really didn't know what I was saying, I really didn't know I was hurting someone. No, they changed by pocketbook, right? So, either Biden is exactly who President Trump says he is and was, or he's the greatest president in the history of all America, because he would be a part of this whole operation because he continued those 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies. Which one is it? It's really that simple. Because again, those 8 national emergencies with 8 executive orders alone, paired together, that were continued by him. If you think he's real and was real and president, he had to continue those on paper. Because they had an automatic terminate, didn't even have to touch it, didn't even have to look at it anymore, didn't even have to address it out of his mouth, didn't even have to give any energy, positive or negative, towards his people and or President Trump and our people. Didn't even have to give any energy towards it whatsoever. Just let them terminate. Let them fade off into the sunset. But he didn't. For those of you who think he's real and was president, had to sign them and continue them. Remember Columbo? Boy, I love Columbo. I've been binge watching Columbo episodes again. Columbo. There may be people who don't like me. Tough crap. I don't care. But for the people who do love me, you know one thing. I'm consistent and I'm passionate. And I show you everything that will empower you, and you don't even have to pay for it. Now, yes, these books, my gosh, it's 22 or whatever dollars to print this bad boy. All right? It's maybe more than that. I don't even know. I just know it's a big number. All right? It takes, and especially in today's technology, right? Now printing companies are obsolete. It's like checkbooks. Nobody has a checkbook anymore, but, I mean, I do. But still, when you ask people, you take a check, they look at you like where are you from? Like, what in the world and what in the 1990s is going on here? And I'm like, well, look, I mean, it's a record, and I keep a record, you keep a record, and that's what it does. Well, we're in the world of technology now, right? So print is more obsolete. So you got to find companies now that can print in that kind of bulk. Other than that, though, that's the only thing that supports me, are books and my music. That's it. I have Billboard hits in country music independently without a major record label. All right, before all this happened to me. But God said, you know what? We won't have country music and you won't have any of that if we don't save America right now and save America first. And also you, as a veteran, know what's going on. You know what's going on, so why would I hide the IQ and capacity I have when God gave me the ability to give it to you? Right? So, you have it. You have all that. You have everything you need. You don't need anybody else. There's no new material out there. Everything is in place that President Trump is using right now was invoked in 2017 and 2020, and or, not just a national emergency, but the Foundational Order, Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, still in place. All those orders from that and that clause still in place. The executive orders without national emergencies still in place. Why didn't Joe revoke the executive order that federalized the reserve components? I mean, we could keep going again, but you have everything you need. Everything. You have bookends. So, again, if you're struggling with your friends and your family out there, from the standpoint of, especially if you are married, or if it's your children and they're, it's like tension, and, when it comes to, again, love, when you love somebody, but it's created tension, or it's created stress, anxiety, or it's created, you put your marriage on the rocks, or whatever it may be, especially when COVID did that. So, and that was a retaliation move by the deep state. So, when you know of a person like me, you don't need anything else. And I'm not knocking everybody else that I personally know either, but I'm saying that you need somebody that knows what's going on lawfully on both sides and how to dissect it, put it together. And again, you don't need a lot of other stuff. That's how you separate all of your emotions, your feelings, and it's also how you gain control of your emotions and your feelings. It's also how you discern those. It's how you know if you're looking at something. but there's nothing that's going to be added out there now. Now, what President Trump is doing are still paired with what he did in the first 4, because it's an operation. The whole thing's an operation. So, people are still looking for something new to drop. Nothing's going to be new except for the actions of deportation, the actions of what's going on with Doge, the actions, right? Those are what's new. But the orders are already in place, and they've been in place. So nothing's going to be there. So when someone brand new pops up and they're creating chaos and confusion, and it's propaganda and it's drama and it goes against the grain of laws and orders, straight up law, leave it alone. Really that simple. All right, so you have everything you need. You have your bookends. And this right here, you should, I'm telling you, you should tag. I'm ready for it, baby. I've already been doing this, first off. But that's why I was put here. You should tag every liberal you know on this video and say, look, divorce your emotions, divorce your feelings, divorce what you think you knew, and explain again why your guy, if you're a Democrat and a liberal, Joe Biden, I know he wasn't real, wasn't president, but you thought he was and you think he was, then you have to explain why it's your guy. You should be mad at your guy, your Democratic Party, your Democratic senators, your Democratic congressmen. You should be mad. I know it's an operation, but you don't know that yet. And until you study what I talk about, you don't know that. All right? So if you think all that was real, then you got to explain why it was your people who enabled President Trump to use what he's using right now, because that's what was put into place by him 2017 to 2020, and that's what he's using right now. Now, he could have terminated those if he would have been real, and President Trump issued new ones now, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it's the mere fact that that didn't happen. For people that thought Biden was real and president, he didn't terminate anything. He didn't revoke anything. So everything President Trump's doing, all he had to do was walk in and not skip a beat. He didn't have to reissue anything or rewrite anything or re-invoke anything. He just walked right in and said, all right, thank you for continuing those. For the people that thought he was real, that's not what happened, but for the people that thought that, that's what's taking place. Tag every liberal you know. We'll see.